The origins of the house. Once upon a time there was no house. The people lived simply on the land in harmony with the rest of creation and with each other. They did not see themselves as apart from creation, but as part of creation. Like a ray of sunlight, a grain of sand on a beach, or a drop of water in the ocean, they knew they were linked to every other living thing of creation, and that every other living thing of creation was linked to them. It was because of this that they were careful to live without doing harm to any other part of creation, because they knew that if they harmed one part of creation, they were also harming themselves and the rest of creation. They lived like this for many, many years. Then one day the people of the land saw an enormous ship sailing towards the shores of the land they lived on. As it grew closer, they saw men covered from head to toe in strange garments, carrying objects they had never seen before. The ship stopped and some men climbed down into a smaller boat and headed for the shore. Wary but curious, the people of the land moved to greet them. A man got out of the boat and walked towards them. The people of the land greeted him courteously, stifling their amusement at the way he was dressed. The man opened his mouth and spoke gobbledygook. Again, muffling their giggles, the people of the land used sign language to try and communicate. They offered food and water. The man offered them some brightly coloured objects which seemed to have no use, but which were accepted gracefully by the people of the land, who did not want to seem ungrateful. The man went back to his ship. Days passed and the men from the ship visited daily. The people of the land continued to be polite, but they could not comprehend what the men wanted or why they persisted in giving them so many useless objects made from materials they had never seen before. Most of the people of the land tried to get on with their usual way of life, but one or two of them spent time with the strange men, learning their gobbledygook in an attempt to find out what they were doing there. Eventually they called a gathering of the people of the land. They explained that the men on the ship wanted to build a great house, which was a place for everyone to live. The men on the ship would teach the people of the land how to live in the house and new ways of living with each other. They would teach them their gobbledygook and show them how to cover themselves like the men on the ship. They would show them new ways to keep healthy, new ways to eat, and new ways to raise their children. They would give the people of the land some of their strange things and teach them how to use them. The people of the land talked for a long time. They did not see anything wrong with the way they already lived their lives in harmony with the rest of creation. They had also seen the men from the ship behaving in ways they did not like. The men killed some of their animal friends with things called guns, made fires and sometimes drank something that made them behave very stupidly and even made them ill. The food the men gave the people of the land made them feel unwell, and some of them had also felt ill just from being in contact with the men. They could not see what benefit the house would bring them. The people of the land politely refused the offer of the men on the ship and went about their business, expecting the ship to leave. To their surprise, the next morning they found all the men from the ship lined up on the shore holding their guns. They said they had come to build the house for the people of the land. The people of the land repeated their disinterest in the house and asked the men to leave. One of the men from the ship fired his gun into the air. The house was to be built. So began a time of terror for the people on the land. Anyone who refused to go along with the men from the ship was killed. Women were taken and children beaten. Other people of the land arriving to help were killed or forced to help with the building of the house. More men arrived on ships with more guns and the mass murders began. The people of the land resisted as they could until they were worn down by the endless murder and destruction. For the sake of their children, the remaining people of the land subjected themselves to the will of the men from the ship. They helped to build the house and took up residence in it. They learned the ways of the men on the ship, to work for the men on the ship, and to send their children to the learning centres of the house. They tried to teach their children the stories of their previous peaceful ways of life, but they were so traumatised they found it hard to talk about, and the stories they did tell were usually contradicted by what their children were taught at the learning centres. Many of the older people of the land died of broken hearts. More men, women and children arrived on ships and also moved into the house. They were given the best rooms and the important work. The people of the land who had the energy to care were aggrieved by this and complained. The builders of the house smoothed things over with a few promises, but nothing much changed. The problems of the house had begun.